Hi everyone, this is the fourth video in this series of 6 videos that aims to teach you about food groups and how you can rebalance your plate of food to help you bring down your calories, lose weight, and have other health improvements. So this is the perfect plate for weight loss. I've been explaining to you how and why this is a perfect plate for weight loss. We'll review some new topics today and then go back and review some of what was in the past videos. So I return to this picture at the beginning of every video because it shows you on the left a meal that is very enjoyable. You can eat it to fullness. It's very big for how many calories are in it. It's very satisfying of cravings. It gives you good craving control over the course of your day. It's very low fat, and it has a lot of nutrients that are beneficial to your body. It's essentially eating food as medicine. So you can lose weight eating to fullness. But on the right side is a meal that, if you eat to fullness, things like that, meals that look like that, restaurant meals that look like that, that's something that will lead to fairly rapid weight gain for a number of reasons. Everything you see there, other than the soda and the beer, is high fat. The healthy carbs, potatoes are fried and they're covered in a lot of extra fat. The amount of butter on the otherwise low-fat lobster really raises it to a high-fat dish, and ribs and all barbecue food are mostly fat calories. The dessert, that's the type of food that has the most calories possible in a given space. There's so many calories in that tiny space in that dessert, and it's because of sugar, and it's because of fat, and it's because it's not a whole food. So on the right side, you eat meals and foods like that, you gain weight, sometimes very rapidly. On the left, it's a meal that you can eat to fullness, very enjoyable, and it helps you lose weight and improve all of your health issues. So I want to talk about blood sugar because I'm recommending that you eat quite a lot of carbs and indeed get most of your energy from carbs, but healthy carbs. So I like to talk about rice first as it relates to blood sugar. So this graph here shows you how the percent of people with type 2 diabetes has changed in the country of China over the last 30 plus years. And what you see is that in 1980, the prevalence, the rate of type 2 diabetes was about 1%. And a good part of the country, it's not exaggerating to say they live on rice, particularly white rice. And so you have very, very high consumption of rice in a population that has a diabetes rate of only 1%. You move up to the present time where things have been westernized. There's a lot more refined flour and sugar, processed foods, lots and lots of oil, and lots of conventional proteins, things like chicken and beef, and that stuff's become much more available. So with those changes, you see the rise in this rate of type 2 diabetes. And what really hasn't changed that much is how much rice, on average, is eaten in China. So the rice hasn't changed, and you see how this rate has skyrocketed. So this is just an example, a very indirect example of how a high consumption of healthy carbohydrates is not something that is disease risk increasing. It does not increase your risk. It depends on other factors. So the ultimate way to cause your blood sugar to rise would be to be inactive and eat a lot of meats and sweets, basically. So the proteins do cause a lot of cravings for the sweets, and it's a cycle of a very unbalanced diet, a very Western diet that's full of cravings. And eating this pattern of food without enough vegetables, without enough fruits, without enough fiber, without enough protein from peas and pasta and other things, you just have your blood sugar rise, especially if you're inactive. And because of the processed, the flour-based carbs that you're eating, you do have spikes at meals because of foods like that, because of the flour. So what you see is that the red line, your fasting blood sugar, starts to rise, starts to go up. That's your blood sugar when you wake up in the morning. And then you see spikes in your blood sugar at meals. That's what those humps are meant to represent. Your blood sugar goes up, then it comes back down. Now, these are very big spikes. And it's on top of chronic weight gain, a lot of fat in the diet, and a lot of very, very refined, basically flour-based carbohydrate. And this is kind of the worst of all situations. Your fasting blood sugar goes up, and then the spikes at meals get higher. Now, what a lot of people do to lose weight and see other health improvements is increase the protein, typically fish and chicken and low-fat dairy, and they cut out some of the processed carbs, the sugar plus fat plus flour foods, and they eat more vegetables and they eat more protein. Now, what will happen in this situation is that the fasting level really won't change that much. So you're still going to wake up in the morning with a high blood sugar. But when you cut down on the carbs at meals, the spike is not as high. Chicken and vegetables won't do that. So you do see a relative improvement here. But it's not the pattern that will allow you to reverse the blood sugar issues. It's just not good enough. It's just not optimal enough. Now, when you increase power carbs in vegetables and fruits, you're eating to fullness, what happens is that that fasting level, when you wake up in the morning, what your blood sugar is just starts to go down, and it drops and drops and drops and drops as you're losing weight. So that goes down to a normal level, and it can happen quite quickly. But what can happen is a bump in blood sugar. It's nothing that you'd ever see on your labs, but over the course of about one day, maybe two, you'd see a bit of a rise in your average blood sugar because you are eating more carbohydrate, but soon after, that level starts to fall. And this is the exact type of thing that when we have patients with type 2 diabetes who can do this, we just see this happen very, very consistently. And it's also seen in research studies very clearly. Now, if your fasting blood sugar goes down from these changes in weight loss, you may still have spikes at meals depending on the carbohydrates that you're eating. These will not be severe, and these will be on top of a lower overall level so that you start to normalize your A1C, your average blood sugar. But as your health continues to improve with further weight loss and with activity, but really just getting a lot of fiber as well in your diet, so being more active and eating optimal foods, what you see is that even those spikes in blood sugar at meals start to go down. They become more shallow. So this is really where you get total normalization of your blood sugar. In most cases, you can get there with food. For some people, a little bit of exercise may be necessary. But this is literally how you can reverse both type 2 diabetes and prediabetes in many people. I will now go into some information about cholesterol and, by extension, heart disease. I'll walk you through the causes of high cholesterol and how you can potentially get those levels down and improved. So the most cholesterol-raising pattern would be really the extreme Western diet of meats and sweets. And there's a lot of things going on with these foods that keep cholesterol high or raise it. There are certain types of fats that can raise it a bit. There's sugar. Sugar alone can raise it. Sugar plus saturated fat together is also very powerful. So that's what you get with ice cream and certain desserts. And for someone who's also out of shape, this is what the panel of your cholesterol may look like. So the total cholesterol is too high. That should be lower. The good cholesterol, which is the HDL cholesterol, is too low. The triglycerides are also high. Those can be high for several different reasons. And the LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol, is also too high. It needs to be lower. So to correct each of these things, it's not very complicated, but it may take some time for many people to do to really bring it down. So the first is the effect of exercise. Exercise, and especially getting in shape, is very powerful for changing several of these numbers. Really, all of these numbers, actually. Some more than others. So you go from that first panel where everything is red and abnormal, or high risk, and you exercise and you get a higher good cholesterol. Your triglycerides come down to quite a good level, but you might not see much change in your total cholesterol or your LDL cholesterol, which you'd like to be lower. Sometimes there's a decent change, but for many people, if it happens, it'll be very small. So now with diet change, if you go from this ultimate Western pattern of eating, and you do what a lot of people do, which is to cut out some of the junk food carbs, to eat more chicken and fish, and eat more vegetables and protein, and keep carbs lower but not ketogenic. And this sort of pattern that seems to be the most common will help bring down that cholesterol with exercise, sometimes quite a bit. But in many cases, it won't get down to a totally normal number with this pattern, and that's because there's other foods that would be replacing some of the protein that would bring it down further, and those are the healthy carbs. So when more of your energy comes from healthy carbs, so as more of your eggs are replaced by oats, as more of the fish is replaced by pasta with white beans, as you transfer what's making you full from heavy protein to healthy carbs as your main energy source, that's really the final thing that will bring, in many people, bring those levels down a lot. So you start from the beginning, the fully abnormal panel. You exercise and things improve. You cut out some of the sweets, the junk food sweets, the high sugar, high fat sweets, and eat more chicken, and it comes down a bit more. But then if you eat a diet that's very carbohydrate rich, healthy carbohydrate rich as your energy from fruit, lots of vegetables, more limited amounts of the protein, considerably more limited perhaps than most people would are currently doing, certainly. So, but it's important to know that the numbers here are not the whole picture when it comes to cholesterol, because what you see when you look deeper is actually cholesterol's telling you, it tells you what people are eating, but it also tells you how good their fitness is, whether they're in good shape or not. And when someone is in poor physical shape, not fit, not active, even a low bad cholesterol can mask a lot of what's going on underneath, which is the cholesterol gets harder and smaller and more inflamed and more likely to cause heart disease. So for this reason, the total cholesterol and the bad cholesterol numbers are not the whole picture. If you're out of shape, the cholesterol changes and becomes more disease-causing. If you're in good shape, the cholesterol may not be a problem at all. Something that can happen when people eat more quote-unquote carbs, but it's really just processed carbs with a lot of sugar that do this. But sometimes when you eat more of these foods, you see the triglycerides go up and the good cholesterol go down. But that is not really a sign that the carbs are causing the problem. Because if you give those foods to people who are physically fit, there are no changes in these numbers. So what's happening is that these junk food carbs are unmasking or revealing low physical fitness. This person is out of shape. And for perspective, we talk a lot about diet and disease risk. It's worth knowing that those differences pale in comparison to physical fitness. And that's what you see with certain cholesterol numbers. So this is a study that I read recently that followed people for many years. And at the beginning, they determined how physically fit they were. And they followed all these people over many years, and they waited until health events happened or people died. And what they saw was that the most physically fit people compared to the least fit had a fourfold lower risk of dying. Or in other words, the least physically fit had a fourfold greater risk of dying during that time period. So truly, it's physical fitness that's most important here for longevity. And when I talk about cholesterol, I just need to bring this up. So this is essentially how you can get every number perfect if you get in better shape. 1, 2, if you transfer enough of your fullness, your energy, your protein from processed carbs and a lot of the protein towards healthy carbs as your energy source, more of what you're running on a daily basis. That's what really brings it down for most people to a totally normal level. Part of the difference in the cholesterol, the total and the bad cholesterol, comes down to the protein, actually. So when you compare the protein that's in a pea versus what's in a chicken breast, for example, and you give them to people in equal amounts in terms of calories, you just see differences in the cholesterol levels. They tend to stay higher with the chicken breast and lower with the protein from pasta or peas or beans or something. So everything else being equal, actually, the protein itself here is one of the things that causes the cholesterol to either stay higher or to come down. And, you know, as I said, the numbers aren't everything. And there is a balance here. We don't know quite the right proportion in our diets to get from these different sources, but it is heavily in favor of the protein that's in pasta and lentils and healthy carbs, as well as nuts and fruits and a little bit in certain vegetables. So I want to do a little bit of a review here. I just reviewed protein, and now I'm going to review the volume effect of these foods that I went over on the last one. So a cup of brown rice as part of your meal has 240 calories. That may sound like a lot, it's not a lot. In contrast, a cup of something high fat like sour cream or cheese or something has 1,000 calories. So that's 4 times as much. Going back to the rice, someone who weighs 200 pounds would have to eat 11 cups of brown rice every day just to be able to stay at the same weight. Because that would be so difficult, anyone who tried to do this would not meet the calories that they needed for that day. And that difference they would lose as body fat. They would drop their calories and they would lose weight because of the size, because of how filling something like brown rice is, healthy carbs. This is 17 tennis balls of brown rice. And if you add lots of veggies in that proportion, 50-50, and you eat to fullness, keeping those proportions, the amount of food you'd have to eat is 1.5 gallons of something like broccoli plus brown rice. Vegetables are fruit and water. The more you get them in your meal, the more you get full with fewer calories. The same exact thing is true of pasta. Lots of veggies, 1.5 gallons of food. So we talked also about high-fat foods. People look at things and say, oh, that's a carb, that's a protein, but in many cases, if you're calling it by what it actually contains most of, you would call certain things fats and certain other things fats that people call protein or carbs. They're actually fat sources. So high-fat foods are when over 45 or 50% of the energy is from fat. That's a lot compared to the average food. Of course, I'll start with oil. 100% fat. A tablespoon of oil has 240 calories. So it has a lot of energy for how small it is. And this is largely true of any sort of fat-rich cream sauce like aioli or mayonnaise or sour cream, cream cheese, mostly fat calories, not a protein, of course. People call carbs, they use that word to point to a lot of things, but potato chips, for example, over half the energy is from fat calories because of the added oil, because of the deep fry. You also take all the water out of potatoes when you fry them, so you get a concentration of fat calories and without really any fullness. And that's true of all processed foods that you see here. They're mostly fat sources, and people call them carbs. Cheese is not a protein, but it's treated that way on sandwiches. The amount of cheese that we eat it as the main course in certain cases, or a huge part of appetizers and parties. When you look at cheese, you really have to be looking at it as if it's oil. It's a little bigger, than oil for the same calories, but it's a fat source, and you see that when you warm it up. It has protein and other things in it, but the amount of milk that has to be sort of removed of water to make cheese is enormous. So it is a very concentrated source of fat. It should be in your diet as if you like it for enjoyment and use this flavoring, of course. I'm not here to bash cheese. So when you look at a hot dog or in many cases ham or cured meats, you're really looking at something that's a fat. You're looking at kind of oil with some protein. That's how you might think of it. And it really should be treated that way. Hot dogs are fine on occasion, but they are, frankly, proven causes of cancer. So, when they're at high amounts, of course. So occasional hot dogs fine for the purposes of weight loss, knowing that these processed meats, these cured meats, are really fat sources. Some steak is lean, other is very high fat, and the meat people tend to like is the high fat. People like burgers, people like meatballs, people like ribeye steak, and in that case, you're really getting mostly fat energy. That's how sneaky fat is, and that's the volume effect. Fat has a lot more calories in a smaller space. So, ribeye steak is more accurately a fat source, and, a wild idea would be to maybe use a smaller piece in a meal to flavor some other healthy foods as an alternative, sort of treat it as a fat source and use it more for flavoring. For the most part, ground meat is high fat. There are exceptions. So there's lean ones too, but a lot of them are high fat. Pizza is definitely not a carb. It is a fat. So, and then you can put things on top of it like pepperoni, which is a processed meat, which is 80% fat, and you're looking at something that's just a lot of fat on top of some bread, and most of the energy is coming from the cheese and the other things. If you put veggies on it, veggies have no calories, and it's not going to change the fact that it's still a very high-fat thing. That said, pizza with mostly tomato sauce and light cheese and natural dough and lots of veggies and fruits on top, fruits being tomatoes and eggplant, that's wonderful, and that's probably helpful for weight loss. And the difference is the fat. Barbecue food is, for the most part, very high fat, and it's going to vary. Brisket is probably something like 80% fat calories. Others are maybe a little over half the calories from fat, but people eat a lot of this stuff, and they, you can go back for seconds. You can keep going, and so this is a I think, a very big source of fat for some people. Salmon, surprisingly, is often high fat. It has a lot of healthy fats in it, things that bring down inflammation and other things. But the amount of fat that's in it, the effect of the proteins make it something that's just not that helpful for weight loss, and maybe very weight loss stalling, even though it's healthy, even though the fats are healthier fats. So, sometimes, and I share recipes showing this, you can use salmon more as something that flavors a dish. Like you have a whole grain like farro, you put in a small piece of salmon, some cucumbers, some tomatoes, and you're using it kind of appropriately. And that's a meal that's going to help with weight loss. You get the flavor of the salmon, you get the enjoyment of it, but it's more of a way to help you eat healthy foods rather than being the main event. So eggs do have a good amount of protein, but they are mostly fat calories because they're meant to grow chicken. So when someone has a huge omelet with vegetables, they're just getting a lot of fat. You get some fullness from the protein, but it tends to be short-lived fullness. I will talk about that a bit later. But it's a fat source, and it should be treated that way. When the skin stays on chicken, it's very high fat. And this is true across the board. This is true of rotisserie chicken as well. Bacon, no surprise here. When mayo dresses even low-fat protein, like shrimp salad, tuna salad, chicken salad, most of the energy, by far, starts to come from the fat. So unless you're doing keto, this is not the way to go. If you're eating this with crackers, it's tough because in that meal you're getting the majority of your calories from fat. Now, healthy carbs are all very low fat, and that is you combine that with their helpful effects on fullness. The low fat quality allows you flexibility with how you flavor them. You can use things, reasonable amounts of oil and light cheese and nut butter and things like brown sugar. That's fine. The aim is to make these foods taste good and to get them in your diet, especially power carbs. And one of the ways this really works is these foods have almost no fat compared to what I just showed you. One of the highest is oatmeal, but it's 16%. White pasta, 6%. Whole grain, 10%. It's got some healthy fats from the bran of the grain. Every kind of legume, beans, lentils, chickpeas, very, very low fat. Chickpeas, 14%. Lentils, 3%. Brown rice, 7%. Potatoes, 1%. White rice, 2%. That one I love. Peas, 5%. And with that in mind, you have all of these healthy carbs that are very low fat. And you have something like an egg that is very high fat and is best used as a source of flavoring to provide some vitamins that are otherwise hard to find and to add flavor. And this is a picture of a traditional breakfast. I think this is something seen in Japan as well as China, at different times. And the 7% fat in the brown rice is the basis. The brown rice is the basis of the energy. That's where most of the calories are coming from. And the high-fat egg is spread, 63% calories from fat, is spread all over that brown rice, which is 7% fat. So the average amount of fat, when everything is combined, the average amount of fat is not that high. It's probably about 20% of the energy from fat. The typical American eats somewhere between 37 and 40% of their diet from fat, although I think that's an underestimate, personally. And so even when it's 20% fat with the egg, with a little bit of oil for flavoring, it's still a healthy, low-fat dish that's very filling from all these other things, from the veggies, from the fullness, from the light healthy carb or the power carb. So again, high fat egg combined with a low fat, very low fat brown rice as the basis of your energy, most of your calories. And you get something that's like really, really nicely balanced and kind of meets what's recommended for the proportions of foods in your diet. Now, most people aren't going to have this for breakfast, of course, but this is just to illustrate this example of fats and fullness and the size of a meal and what the ideal balance probably is.